Do you know that if one death had happened sooner, Gojo might still be alive? Here are the most brutal deaths in Jujutsu Kaisen. Dagon. He fought 4 sorcerers at once and looked unstoppable until one man walked in and erased him like nothing. He was a special great curse, one of the most terrifying allies of Jogo, Hanami, and Mahito. In his final fight, he unleashed everything. His domain, his Shikigami, and battled against Maki, Naobita, Megumi, and Nanami all at once. And here's the crazy part. He wasn't losing. For a moment it looked like Dagon might kill them all. Then, Toji appeared. The man with no curse energy, no clan ties left, just raw strength and instinct. He strolled into the battlefield, assessed the chaos, and immediately zeroed in on Dagon. After snatching Maki's weapon like it was his, Toji tore into the curse. What followed wasn't a fight, just slaughter. Toji blitzed Dagon with speed and precision. None of the sorcerers could match. Every strike ripped away the advantage Dagon had built. Every blow reminded him he wasn't facing a cursed killer, he was facing a force of nature. In the end, Toji drove the blade straight through Dagon's skull, pinning him down and ending him in an instant. The Village Massacre. One of the most brutal acts in all of JJK, and all of it was done for just one character. After exercising a spirit that had been plaguing a rural village, Geto thought his work was done, but the villagers weren't satisfied. They demanded he kill 2 innocent girls, claiming the children were the true cause of misfortune. Geto refused, of course, but the accusations didn't stop. The villagers kept pressing, blaming the girls for everything wrong in their lives, and that was when something inside Geto broke. Years of pressure and disgust at the weakness of non-sorcerers finally overflowed. Instead of walking away, Geto unleashed his rage on the very people he was supposed to protect. One by one, he slaughtered every resident of the village, turning the streets into a graveyard. His descent didn't end there. He went on to murder his own parents, erasing any tie left to his former self. This was the moment Suguru Geto was no longer a protector of humanity. It was the moment he had declared war on it. And all of this was done for one character to die, Geto. Hanami. If you ever thought you were stupid, just remember what Hanami tried to do to Gojo. Hanami was one of the top special grade curses, fighting alongside Jogo and Chozo during the Shibuya incident. In the chaos, he slaughtered civilians and helped corner Gojo for the prison round. For a moment, it seemed like nature itself had Gojo on the ropes. But then came Hanami's mistake, the kind that makes you wonder if curses should have gone to school. When Gojo briefly turned off his Limitless, Hanami thought it was an opening. He dropped his amplification and unleashed his curse technique, not realizing Gojo was baiting him. The second amplification vanished, Gojo ripped the branches straight out of Hanami's skull like weeds yanked from a garden. From there, Hanami never stood a chance. Gojo reactivated Limitless, flooding it with curse energy, and crushed him between infinity and the wall behind him. The pressure was so overwhelming, Hanami couldn't move, couldn't react. He was flattened into nothing by the man he thought he had cornered. Hanami wanted to prove curses could overwhelm the strongest sorcerer, but he became the punchline to one of Gojo's easiest executions. Yuji Tadori. Yuji's death was brutal, not because of how painful it was, but because it was absolutely necessary. And it actually happened twice. The first came in chapter 9. Yuji was losing badly, so Sukuna stepped in. We thought it was a save until Sukuna used Yuji's own hand to play Operation with his chest. Imagine watching your own fingers reach in, rip your own heart out, and then realize you're the patient. Yuji flatlined and he was ready for an autopsy, but Sukuna wasn't done. He stitched him back into the plot with a binding vow. 1 minute of body control in exchange for revival. But Yuji's memory about the vow would be wiped clean. Yuji tried to fight, but there's no winning against Sukuna even in his own head. And since Gojo was still alive and kicking, Yuji managed to make a comeback smoothly. But later, after Gojo was sealed in the prison realm, Yuji had his luck run out. The higher-ups slapped a kill order on him and sent in Yuta Kotsu, the almost Gojo of JJK. He came after Yuji with all he got, and stabbed him in the heart. And next, Yuta dragged Yuji's body like he was a villain in a horror movie, dragging his trophy to his collection room. Of course, Yuji was revived again with a reverse curse technique, but still, he was dead because the vow didn't break Yuta down. Now think about it. Yuji didn't even have a love interest in the series, but had to experience heartbreak literally twice. Sukuna. the king of curses, the butcher who painted JJK red for 200 chapters, died in a way that felt like an insult. In the final battle, Yuji pulled off the only technique that could touch Sukuna where it hurt, the soul. With a binding vow that he formed, he sharpened this mantle to only target the line between Sukuna's soul and Megumi's. No blood, no gore, just pure metaphysical surgery. Then came the strike that sealed it. A black flash to rip Sukuna clean out of Megumi. His connection shattered. His fingers vomited out. Sukuna was reduced to a collapsing lump of cursed energy. The irony was, after spending centuries slicing through flesh, Sukuna died by being sliced out of existence, and by his own technique. But here's where it went downhill. Instead of a final execution, Yuji offered mercy. Live in me again. Coexist. Imagine Goku asking Frieza to move in, or Naruto sending Pain a friend request. Wait, that's exactly what they did. But Sukuna wasn't having it. He laughed, spat on Yuji's pity, and said the line that defined him. I'm a curse. No redemption, no compromise. Just pure malice until the end. He chose death over kindness, because even in his last breath, Sukuna's pride was what was important to him. And that's why his death stinks. After all the massacres, all the blood, all the buildup, the King of Curses just dissolved. The Cafe Massacre. Imagine dying just because you picked the wrong restaurant. Sometimes, it's safer to skip dinner altogether. I think that's called fasting. Jogo, Hanami, and Geto sat in a quiet cafe, blending in with the crowd. To the staff and customers, they looked like three ordinary men. The manager, doing his job, walked over to ask if they were ready to order. He barely got the words out before his body ignited like dry paper. Flames swallowed him whole, and within seconds the entire cafe, staff, customers, innocent bystanders were burning alive, screaming and collapsing into ash. The massacre was senseless. These people weren't sorcerers, weren't enemies. They were just in the wrong place, at the wrong time. And that's exactly what made it so terrifying. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't even personal. It was proof that curses weren't villains, they were predators. To them, human lives weren't worth more than the bugs on the floor. One moment you're ordering lunch, and the next you're fuel for a monster's appetite for chaos. Shigeru Sonata. You live by your god, you die by your god. And Sonata found out the hard way. In his case, a lot more people had to die because of him. He was the loyal member of the Time Vessel Association, the cult that worshipped Master Tengen. In his eyes, everything he did was for the higher cause. But his devotion set off a domino effect. His actions directly led to the death of the Star Plasma Vessel, sabotaging Tengen's merger and rewriting the future of Jujutsu Society. It set off Konjaku's plans, the Culling Games, Gojo's death, and more. When Sonata crossed paths with Suguru Geto later, his faith met cold reality. Sonata stood his ground, clinging to his beliefs, and Geto ended him without hesitation. His weapon of choice was a cursed spirit shaped like a doll that cursed him slowly, painfully, until his body snapped under the weight. The Higher-Ups Massacre. One of the biggest incidents in the series that we looked forward to, and the brutality of it only increased the satisfaction. While Gojo was locked away, the higher-ups of the Jujutsu world finally had their chance. For years he had been too strong, too rebellious, too uncontrollable. So with him gone, they rewrote the rules. They criminalized unsealing him, tightened their grip on the clans, and even executed Principal Yaga under the flimsiest excuse, his ties to Gojo. What they really wanted was a secret, the method to create self-sustaining corpses like Panda. But Gojo doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. By the time we see the aftermath in chapter 223, the higher-ups were already gone. Their deaths are only confirmed later in 261. Gojo himself wiped them out. Some fans called it justice, others called it murder. Either way, the higher-ups found out the hard way. If you play politics and kill Gojo's friends, you don't just lose a game, you lose your life. Naoya Zenmi. If there's any character that died the way they should, it's him. Dio is that guy you have every reason to hate. He was cocky, with a grin on his face that you want to punch every time you see it, and when Maki ragdolled him in the Zenin clan massacre, it felt extremely good. But she didn't finish him off. Maki's mother did it for her, and stabbed him in the back. Maybe because his death was not completely satisfying. For him and for us, he came back as a cursed spirit. He came back uglier, nastier, and still obsessed with killing Maki. In battle, he even pulled a mid-fight evolution like a cursed Pokemon leveling up out of spite. His new form gave him a domain expansion, but it carried a fatal design flaw. Since Maki had no cursed energy, the domain couldn't even recognize her as a target. That blind spot was all she needed. Maki struck from behind, driving her katana straight through his chest. Naoya still refused to believe it was over. Gathering his energy, he tried to launch one last attack, but Maki didn't hesitate. With a single clean slash, she cut him in half, erasing both the man and the spirit he became. Chizuru Hari. He thought he caught Megumi slipping, but when you underestimate a Fushiguro, you don't just lose the fight, you lose your face. He was a sorcerer in the Culling Games who tried to take advantage of Megumi when he was battered from Hazanoki's explosions. Dropped several stories by Nue, Hari still managed to crawl back up and even admitted Megumi wasn't too bad, but instead of finishing smart, he got cocky. When he rushed Megumi thinking he had him cornered, Megumi didn't run. He summoned Max Elephant, blasting both of them clean out of the building. Hari thought that was an escape move, but no, Megumi came crashing back in, Tonfa in hand, and beat him into the ground. Blow after blow, each hit harder than the last, until the final strike smashed blood out of Hari's eyes and nose. It was raw brutality. Honoka's dad. In a way, this was the most brutal death of them all, but not because of the way he died. The only thing we really know about this guy was that he was Honoka's dad. That's it. We didn't even know his name. We saw him have a heart-to-heart with his daughter, and he probably felt like he was on cloud 9, until his daughter went John Wick on him and stabbed him with a pen on the back of his neck. Honoka didn't even know why his own daughter was killing. Just imagining it was hard. See, the thing is, it wasn't his daughter. It was Ogami, who took Honoka's form to get close enough to assassinate him. Ogami, a death in the series that became the definition of poetic justice. Ogami was a selfish, old sorcerer who treated her technique like a paycheck. She cursed for money, manipulated for comfort, and never cared about the cost to anyone else. But greed finally caught up to her. In a desperate move, she used her seance technique to implant the body information of Toji Fushiguro into her grandson, effectively hollowing him out and turning him into a living weapon. But she underestimated what she was meddling with. Toji wasn't just some blueprint, he was a force of nature. His will surged back and erased her grandson's soul completely, and Toji reclaimed control of her grandson's body. That's when the tables turned. The weapon she thought she owned stood over her. No longer her grandson, no longer under her command, just Toji. And with the same merciless instinct he showed everyone else, he cut her down. She gambled with her own bloodline, turned family into tools, and in the end her creation erased her the way she erased her grandson. Kokichi Muta. If only this death had happened sooner, the series would have taken a completely different turn. Kokichi, known to his classmates as Mekamaru, lived most of his life inside a broken body. A heavenly restriction gave him vast cursed energy, but the cost was devastating. His flesh was fragile, his skin burned and his bones felt like glass. To escape, he projected himself through the puppet Mekamaru, hiding the truth from everyone at Kyoto Jujutsu High. Then came Mahito's offer. If Kokichi betrayed his school and sided with the curses, Mahito would heal his ruined body. Desperate for freedom, he agreed. But Kokichi's heart wasn't with the curses. Once he got his body back, he tried to turn on Mahito and fight him head-on. It didn't work. Mahito unleashed his domain expansion, trapping Kokichi in idle transfiguration. Kokichi fought back with everything he had, even using a simple domain to counter. But it wasn't enough. Mahito crushed him, body and soul, and left him for dead. Like another broken tool, discarded. The tragedy of Mekamaru isn't just that he betrayed his friends, it's that his one moment of hope, his one chance to finally live like a normal person, ended with his body healed, only to be destroyed a heartbeat later. And if he accepted this fact before he made the deal and just died in peace, the Shibuya incident wouldn't have happened at all. Gojo wouldn't have been sealed, and Sukuna would have died the moment he was revived. Jogo. He dreamed of being feared as the strongest curse. Instead, his death proved exactly that. Just not in the way he wanted. In chapter 112, Jogo made his boldest move. He force-fed Yuji 10 of Sukuna's fingers to awaken the King of Curses. In desperation, he begged Sukuna to form a binding vow with Yuji so the plan wouldn't fall apart. Sukuna laughed him off. Instead, he offered Jogo a deal. Land a single hit on me, and I'll do what you ask. What followed wasn't a fight, it was an execution. From the very first clash, Jogo was completely outclassed. Sukuna cut off his arms, shattered his jaw, and mocked him with every blow. At one point, he even joked that the moonlight made it easier to see how pathetic Jogo really was. On his knees, mangled and desperate, Jogo admitted the truth. He was nowhere near Sukuna's level. As a last gamble, he summoned his ultimate technique, a blazing meteor that scorched Shibuya itself. Buildings crumbled, the city burned, and Sukuna walked out without a scratch. Then came the cruelest humiliation. Sukuna challenged him to a contest of firepower. To Jogo, it was his final chance. To Sukuna, it was like a child torching an anthill. The flames consumed Jogo until nothing was left but ash. The only mercy he got was a final word of respect, Sukuna calling him strong. So, if even Sukuna said it, bro was definitely strong, but the situation kinda undermined his glory. Kuro Rushi. If he was just a little weaker, he would have saved himself from a world of pain, cause what made his death so painful was his own strength. Kuro Rushi was a special grade cockroach curse, unleashed by a Kenjaku during the culling games, and it was the kind of nightmare that makes you want to burn your house down. It didn't just get exorcised once, it came back for seconds. The first time, Yuta literally ate its face, blasting curse energy straight out of his mouth, and tearing Kuro Rushi apart. But the monster had a grotesque survival trick, parthenogenesis. It spawned offspring inside its own body to revive itself, crawling back into the fight like the world's most disgusting family reunion. But in chapter 179, Yuta finally ended the infestation. He cut through Kuro Rushi's regeneration, blasted its head clean off, and left nothing crawling behind. Ryu Ishigori. I wonder what hurt more, Sukuna's final strike, or the last thought Ryu Ishigori had before it hit. Ryu was a powerhouse sorcerer from 400 years ago, revived by Kenjaku to fight in the culling games. When he finally clashed with Sukuna, he came in confident, charging headfirst at the King of Curses. Sukuna's first move was ruthless. He tried to slice Ryu into 3 pieces instantly, but Ryu survived it. For a split second, even Sukuna had to admit he underestimated him. It was a kind of recognition most sorcerers never got. But with Sukuna, respect isn't mercy, it's a warning. Ryu pressed forward with everything he had, unleashed his strongest attack in a desperate attempt to make the King of Curses bleed. Sukuna answered by keeping his promise to go all out. One clean, merciless slash split Ryu's face down the middle, carving him through like a blade through wet paper. And just like that, it was over. A sorcerer who lived for battle, who craved the thrill of worthy fight, died with the bitter realization that even at his peak, he was nothing in Sukuna's eyes. Maybe the cut ended him instantly, but the true pain was knowing his strength had never been enough. Mimiko and Nanako. They proved that loyalty doesn't always pay. It could actually kill. The twin sisters were bound by devotion to Suguru Geto. Even after his death, their loyalty never wavered. When they realized the Geto walking around was an imposter, they took matters into their own hands. In chapter 111, they force-fed Yuji one of Sukuna's fingers, gambling everything on awakening the King of Curses to take out Pseudo Geto. Later, when Sukuna finally emerged after consuming 10 more fingers, the twins made their fatal move. They approached him with desperation, begging him to kill the imposter and offering another finger as a reward. To them, it was loyalty, a desperate plea for justice in Geto's name. But Sukuna doesn't deal in justice. He doesn't take orders, and he definitely doesn't tolerate being treated like a hired blade. His answer was immediate. One swing, then another. The twins' heads severed cleanly. Mahito. The only problem with Mahito's death was that it wasn't nearly brutal enough for a villain this twisted. He had tormented Yuji, slaughtered innocents, and turned lives into experiments, just to feed his curiosity. He was the face of cruelty in JJK. After being thoroughly beaten by Yuji for the first time, the smug grin vanished. Mahito was desperate. He tried to run, but Pseudo Geto had other plans. He appeared out of nowhere, and in one chilling move, ended Mahito's story. With a flick of his technique, he compressed Mahito into a small, writhing pill, and then swallowed him whole. A monster who thrived on twisting souls was reduced to a bite-sized snack, absorbed into Geto's arsenal without ceremony. It was shocking, it was cruel, but it was almost too quick. After everything Mahito did, his end came not from Yuji's vengeance, but from being devoured by his own ally. Kento Nanami. He was a hero till the end, but even heroes have their breaking point. Nanami's last moment was as human as it was brutal. He was once a student of Jujutsu High, an underclassman of Gojo and Geto. After leaving the sorcerer life behind for a time, he returned carrying the weight of duty on his shoulders. But by the time of Shibuya, his body was already failing him. He had lost an eye fighting Dagon. His shoulder was ruined and then Jogo burned him alive. Half his body charred and barely holding together. Still Nanami kept moving. Bloodied, delirious, he drifted into a dream of Malaysia, imagining a quiet life by the sea, even as he cut down waves of transfigured humans. That vision carried him forward, until he saw Mahito waiting ahead, and Yuji in the distance. With nothing left to give, Nanami passed the torch with his final words, "You've got it from here." And then it ended. Mahito touched him, and in an instant Nanami's upper body exploded. Kenjaku. His death should have been the most meaningful one in the series, but it was the least meaningful one. Geto lost to Yuta and Rika. He was wounded and suffering when Gojo killed him as one final act of mercy for his friend, but he didn't bother cleaning up the corpse. That choice opened the door for something far worse. Kenjaku stole Geto's corpse by literally transplanting his own brain into it. With that grotesque operation, Kenjaku inherited not just Geto's body, but his cursed techniques, and even his memories, wearing him like a perfect disguise. That's why long after Geto's death, his face and voice kept returning, twisted into a vessel for Kenjaku's plans. The Shibuya incident, the culling games, everything was because of one choice Gojo made. It wasn't until much later that Kenjaku finally met his end. In chapter 243, Yuta decapitated him, but Kenjaku lived on, because his brain remained intact. The real death came in chapter 249, when Yuta drove his blade through Kenjaku's brain, destroying the one organ that truly carried him. Toji, Fushi, Guro. The only character in the series whose two deaths actually mattered. His first death came during the Hidden Inventory arc. After a brutal fight with Gojo, he was annihilated by Hollow Purple, half his body erased in an instant. But before he died, he revealed something cold and unsettling. He had been planning to sell his own son, Megumi, to the Zenin clan. That death defined him as a mercenary, a weapon of violence who lived for profit and left only bitterness behind. But Toji's story wasn't finished. During the Shibuya incident, Ogami used her seance technique to resurrect him in a reanimated body. This wasn't Toji the man, it was Toji the instinct, pure carnage on legs. His rampage tore through curses and sorcerers alike until it led him straight to Megumi. And that's when everything changed. In the middle of their fight, Toji recognized his son. He realized Megumi had chosen the Fushiguro name, rejecting the Zenin clan. In that moment, the monster disappeared, and the father made his first real choice for his child. Toji turned his blade on himself, driving it into his skull to end his second life before his rampage could hurt Megumi. That's why both of Toji's deaths mattered. The first one cemented his reputation as a monster. The second one redeemed him, if only for a single breath, as a father. Satoru Gojo. The most brutal part about Gojo's death wasn't how it happened. It was the fact that it happened at all. He wasn't just another character in Jujutsu Kaisen, he was the character. The strongest sorcerer alive, the untouchable between humanity and curses. The man whose infinity made him feel invincible even to the readers. For years fans believed one thing was certain: Gojo doesn't die. And then Sukuna proved everyone wrong. Using Mahoraga's adaptation, Sukuna developed the world-cutting slash, a technique that bypassed infinity by slicing the very fabric of reality itself. It didn't even aim for Gojo directly. It severed the space around him, leaving his body cleaved clean in half, his legs still standing, his torso already gone. But the real gut punch wasn't the gore, it was the context. Just moments earlier, Gojo had been dominating Sukuna, landing black flashes and overwhelming him. There was no build-up, no warning, no foreshadowing. The strongest sorcerer was erased by an attack fans didn't even know existed. And far worse, it happened off-screen. That's why Gojo's death hit harder than almost any other in the series. It wasn't just a loss in the story, it was a betrayal of what everyone thought Jujutsu Kaisen was building toward. The strongest was gone not in a climactic showdown, but in a single stroke that left the entire fanbase arguing. Haruta Shigemo. He survived on dumb luck and miracles for the entire story, until the one time luck couldn't save him. During the Shibuya incident, Shigemo got caught in Sukuna's domain expansion malevolent shrine. Sukuna didn't even care about him. He told Shigemo to get lost, and for a second Shigemo thought he'd escaped death yet again. But that sense of safety didn't last. In his panic, he sprinted straight into the edge of the domain's active radius. The barrier cut through him instantly, slicing him in half before he could even react. By then, his curse technique, which gave him a limited stockpile of miracles to cheat death, had already run dry. There were no more miracles left to burn. Sukuna didn't mean to kill him, but in the King of Curses domain, intent doesn't matter. Just being in the wrong place at the wrong time was enough to erase him. After all this trickery, Shigemo didn't die because someone beat him. He died because someone finally ran out of luck. Chozo. He went in on one of the most painful ways anyone could go. He deserved it, but you still can't help but feel bad about it. Chozo was one of the cursed womb death paintings born from the twisted experiments of Nodotoshi Kamo. At first he fought under Konjaku's orders, until he learned the truth. Konjaku wasn't his enemy. He was the very man who created and tormented his family. Even more shocking, Yuji Tadori was tied to that same bloodline. That revelation flipped everything. Chozo, once Yuji's executioner, became his protector, his self-declared older brother. That loyalty defined his final act. In chapter 259, when Sukuna unleashed his divine flames inside the malevolent shrine domain, Chozo stepped in front of Yuji. With his blood manipulation, he hardened his body into a desperate shield to absorb the inferno. For a moment it held, protecting Yuji from the burn of Sukuna's power. The strain was still too much. The curse energy drained, the heat seared through him, and Chozo's body disintegrated in the flames. Junpei Yoshino. Junpei's story was the ultimate bait and switch. Mahito gave him hope, only to rip it away in the most brutal way possible. He was just an ordinary high schooler, bullied and isolated, when Mahito stepped into his life. After killing 3 of Junpei's classmates, Mahito posed as his friend, manipulating him with kindness and feeding him curse energy techniques. For the first time, he thought he had someone on his side. But Mahito's kindness was a mask. He gaslit Junpei into believing one of his classmates was behind his mother's death, steering him toward revenge. When Yuji tried to stop him, it was already too late. Mahito revealed his true colors. With idle transfiguration, he twisted Junpei's body into a grotesque half-formed monster. Yuji begged Sukuna to save him, but Sukuna refused, mocking him just as Mahito did. Junpei collapsed at Yuji's feet, broken, barely human. His final word a single devastating question. Why? Nagi Yoshino. Sometimes the most brutal deaths in JJK aren't the loudest. They're the quiet ones that rip away everything a character cares about. Nagi Yoshino was Junpei's kind and gentle mother, always encouraging him to make friends. When Yuji first met her, she immediately welcomed him, seeing him as the kind of friend her son desperately needed. For a moment it felt like Junpei's life was finally turning around, but that hope was crushed overnight. After sharing a simple dinner with Yuji and Junpei, Nagi dozed off at the table. When she woke up, her son and Yuji were gone, but Sukuna's finger was lying there. She picked it up, realizing it had already drawn a cursed spirit into their home. We never see her death on screen, but what comes after is horrifying. Her lower body was missing, and a corpse was found covered with ice packs and compresses, as if someone tried to preserve it just for Junpei to see. The Zenin clan massacre. The worst thing about Zenin clan's deaths wasn't the pain itself. It was that they were wiped out by the very thing they despised the most. The Zenins hated Maki and Mai, considering them failures unworthy of their bloodline. Their plan was simple: eliminate Megumi, Maki, and Mai to prevent Megumi from ever taking leadership of the family. But when Ogi Zenin ambushed his daughters, everything changed. He defeated Maki, threw both sisters into a cursed spirit training room, and left them to die. Inside, Mai made her choice. With her last breath, she poured her life force into creating a single cursed tool, the split soul katana, and gave it to her sister. Her final words were simple: destroy everything. Awakening with her sister's weapon in hand, Maki slaughtered Ogi first, cutting down the father who hated her since birth. From there she unleashed a massacre. The Kukuru unit, martial artists without curse techniques, fell next. Their captain, Nobuaki Zenin, was cut down. Jinichi Zenin lost his head, and Ranta overextended his technique, bleeding from his eyes before Maki finished him off. Even Naoya couldn't escape. As he crawled away wounded, his own mother stabbed him in the back, sealing his fate. Maki didn't stop there. She hunted out every remaining Zenin one by one until the clan was nothing but corpses. By the end, the Zenin name, once one of the great families, was annihilated. The most brutal thing about Zenin clan's deaths was that they were wiped out by the very thing they despised the most. Dura. This one death is about to destroy everything Yuji and Gojo tried to protect. Dura was an undefeated warrior of the Rumerian tribe, the same tribe that ended up on Earth decades after Gojo and Sukuna died. Dura was strong enough to destroy a cliff just by punching it. He was the main person working on a life-changing project to build a canal in the desolate area where the Rumerians were living. The purpose of the canal was to help irrigate the land for crop growth, as well as to create an easier tradeway with the Deskunte. This would also help strengthen the bond between the two tribes. However, a Kalyan, a type of beast Rumerians usually worship, ended up killing the daughter of the Deskunte tribe. This caused a conflict between the Deskunte and Rumerian tribes. The Deskunte chieftain demanded 90% of the Rumerian territory, as well as the canal in exchange for his daughter's life. They even challenged the Rumerians to a duel. In the end, Dura ended up fighting that duel. And in that duel, he made one last desperate attempt for peace, but it was rejected. Dura had to fight his best friend, Dabura, who was forced into the fight. Dabura was much stronger than Dura and completely destroyed him in the fight, and ended up killing him in the process. However, even after his death, he was able to give his village a way to survive. Turns out Dura already had a backup plan in place. That's how Rumerians escaped their planet and came to Earth, with Dabura tagging along with them and his Sukuna level strength. And you know how? Maki, who couldn't even see the cursed spirits without her special glasses, turned into probably one of the strongest characters, all because of one binding vow.